Hey guys, welcome back to Simple Builds. Today we're going to do the second part of that video where we build a mold for this Batman helmet. So let's jump into it. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things you're going to need first. Obviously we've got the helmet and we did all the clay work in the previous video. So now we're actually going to be laying down some silicone and building out that mold shell. So first thing you'll need is some sort of cups. I use plastic cups to separate the two halves of the silicone. You're going to want a scale for measuring out the silicone. Here I have some Man Ease Release 200. This is a mold release spray. We're going to use this to make sure that the silicone separates easily from the helmet and doesn't stick. And I have two 1 gallon jugs of the Umu, actually it's the Smooth On Rebound 25. You're also going to need some of this. This is some Thivex. This stuff will thicken the silicone. After the first layers go on, they're going to go on pretty thin. The next layer that goes on is going to be thicker, and you're going to need to thicken it with this. It doesn't take much, just a little bit. You're going to need some gloves, some mixing sticks, and I use some cheap brushes to brush on the silicone for the first go around. So let's move in close, and we're going to go ahead and measure out and start pouring on the silicone. Okay, so as you can see, I've laid down some plastic on the table. This is going to help get any silicone, on my table, which it doesn't really matter. The silicone will peel right off, but anyways, it's just to kind of keep it clean. So first thing I want to do is spray this thing down with some mold ease release. This is going to help to make sure that the silicone comes off. You can spray it on the clay as well. It won't hurt it. So let that sit for, it doesn't take long, just a minute or so. So in the meantime, I'm gonna get my cups ready. So what I like to do is have 3 cups, one for each of the 2 halves of the silicone mix that I pour into an individual cup, and I don't mix those. And then I have one that I pour these 2 into to mix. And then this cup will be the cup that I reuse to keep pouring it on here. So the thing about doing silicone, especially the first layer is like the most critical, because that's the one that catches all the details. So you don't want any air bubbles in there. So when you mix these up, you're mixing it, you're obviously going to be creating air bubbles. So what you want to do is you want to pour it from really high and let a thin strand of silicone pour down onto the helmet. This kind of, as that strand is falling, it gets really, really narrow, and the bubbles that are in the silicone just kind of like pop as they're falling. So I'm going to start out with a pretty liberal amount, probably I would say when you're mixed, probably about 3/4 of a cup to start. And I'm only going to do this half, the half with the keyed clay in it. And then once this half is nice and thick, we'll pull the clay out, spray some ease release, and then do the other half. So, and it may be over a period of a day or 2. You may not do it all in one sitting. So, all right, so let's get started. Let's open up these. So I've got the big jugs, maybe a little harder to pour, but what I'm going to try to do is fill up 1 cup with each of these, and I'm going to cut it loose with a mixing stick. So you can't use the same stick for both cups, obviously, because you don't want to mix them. So I'm going to do the pink one first. And it's fairly thick, so it can be kind of a bear to work with. Let's see. So, as you can see, I kind of made a mess with that. That's why you wear gloves. So I'm actually going to change these out. I'm just going to set the lid back so that it doesn't get any kind of contaminants on it. Let's do the next one. Let's see if I can maybe bend it. Ooh, that's a lot. Got a nice full cup on that one. Okay. Try to clean up my bucket a little bit. Now that we have our 2 halves, we're gonna go ahead and measure out on the scale. I'm measuring in ounces. So I'm going to put my empty cup on the scale, 0 that. Alright, let me move this where you guys can see it. Alright, so I've zeroed out my cup. Now I'm going to pour the halves in one at a time, trying to keep it slow and controlled. So I'm at 5.2 ounces. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop at that. And this stick is for that color, so I leave it with it. All right, so my next one, 5.2 is what I've got to get in there. So I'm gonna zero it out again. Go ahead and pull some out. I'm at 4. Gotta go slow so you don't overdo it. .25. So I got a little bit more in there. That's okay. All right. So now we're gonna mix them. Once we start the mixing, you don't have a ton of time. I mean, you do, but it's good to go ahead and get it spread out as quickly as you can. So I'm gonna start mixing it around. I'm gonna make sure you mix this thing really, really good. It's gonna end up being like a light orange color if you're using the Rebound 25. And make sure you pull it all from the bottom there too. Pull it up to the top, then mix it in. All right, so it's gonna look like this color. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and start pouring it. So we're gonna pour it from really high up. And I'm gonna get a, I'm gonna actually use one of these sponge brushes. Just want to get it all over there. Get it up against the clay if you can. Try not to cross the clay onto the other side though just yet. And it's okay if it runs down. We're gonna be cleaning that all up. This is very satisfying watching this. Alright, so I'm going to slow it down. Go ahead and make sure that it's coming down nice. Kind of push it into all those little crevices. You kind of want to let it naturally flow down if you can. So we're going to let that flow a little more. Put some more on it. Starting to get some drips now, so you're going to want to start spreading it, trying to prevent it from dripping. You're really going to want to work it into these under areas, because if not, it's just going to go right past them. Now this stuff will kind of self-level, and it will, a lot of the bubbles will go on their own, but you kind of want to help it. Alright guys, so the first layer is on and it's cured, so when you touch it, it doesn't stick to your finger. So we're going to go ahead and mix up the second layer, and we're not going to thicken this one with 5X yet. We're going to just pour it on just like the first one, and it's going to stick to this first layer really well. So we want to make sure we reinforce some of these undercut areas and make sure we get it nice and thick in there. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up the next batch and we'll pour the next one on. Okay, so same concept as the first go around. We're gonna pour it from really high and let it run down, real thin. That'll get a lot of the air bubbles out, and hopefully we can. The next layer we do will be a little thicker. And I use a stick to spread this second layer on because the first layer is the one that caught most of the details. So it's okay if you kind of disturb the silicone a little bit, but make sure you get it up into all the crevices. And this stuff's real runny, so it's, you know, you're gonna spill some. You're not gonna get it all on there, but I mean, that's okay. All right, so the next one we're gonna mix up is gonna have some Thivex in it. So this Thivex is gonna thicken it up, and we're really gonna get some thickness built up on this thing. It doesn't take much Thivex, so just keep that in mind. Just really just a couple drops, squirt or so, and that's all you need. So I'm gonna measure out my 2 parts again. Let's see, so. Go ahead and measure 5 ounces of each. All right, so now we're gonna add some Thivex, not a lot, just a little bit. That's enough. And we're gonna mix this thing up, and it's gonna start to get thicker than the first couple of rounds that we did. And you'll be able to tell because it won't run, it'll just kind of set in place. Make sure you mix this stuff really good though. It's starting to thicken up already. It'll get harder to mix. And you'll notice that it doesn't run, and it also kind of traps bubbles. So you got to be more cautious about the bubbles and breaking those out once you're laying this stuff on the piece. It can be a bear to mix it once it gets thick. All right, so now that we got this stuff pretty thick, I'm just go ahead and start globbing some on. You see how it's not running, but well, it is, but it's very slow compared to what it was before. The way I do it is I kind of move the stick around, and it breaks out any of the bubbles that are there. Kind of helps get those bubbles out. All right, we're gonna let this one cure, and then we'll come back and do another layer or two of the thickened silicone, and then I think it'll be done on this side. All right, guys, so we've put on 2 layers of thin silicone, and then I've got 1 layer on here of the thickened stuff. And as you can see, we're starting to get a little meat to it now. So I'm gonna keep putting on some thickened silicone until I get it roughly 1/4 to 3/8 inches thick all the way around. And it'll actually be even thicker right here where the fin is. And you want that to be thick because that's where those pieces are gonna line up and hold its form. So if I make that really thick, it'll hold the form of the head correctly. So I'm gonna go ahead and thicken up another batch, get some more silicone out, and put it on here. Alright guys, we've laid some thick layers of silicone on. I still have a few more layers I want to lay on here, but I want to go ahead and show you guys how I make my keys. So in order for the outer mold to have something to line up correctly on the silicone jacket, you're going to want some sort of like registration spots. And so what I do is I'll take empty paint containers like this, fill them up with silicone, let the silicone cure, and then I'm left with these cylindrical cubes that I can stick onto the silicone and create registration keys. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and mix some silicone up, pour it into here, put that aside so it can cure, and then I'm going to mix the rest of the silicone that I have up and thicken it and lay yet another layer of thickened silicone onto the mold. So we're going to do that now. Alright guys, as you can see, we've got a really thick layer of silicone on one half of the helmet. I'm just about ready to go ahead and start pulling off the clay and expose the silicone here at the fin, and then once that's done, we'll start putting the silicone on this other side. As you can see, those registration keys that I poured into the little paint containers, they cured, and I stuck them onto here with silicone. The thing about the silicone is you can use it like glue and the silicone sticks to itself, so I just took some silicone, rubbed it on the bottom of these things and just stuck them on there, and they cured, and so now it's like it's part of the deal, it's not going to come off. So I've got a good thick layer of silicone all the way around this whole thing, so I'm feeling really good about it. So right now I'm going to move the camera, we're going to go ahead and start pulling off the clay and exposing the helmet and the silicone seam, where the seam is going to be. Alright guys, as you can see, silicone's off on one side, the clay's been kind of cleaned up. I'm going to go ahead and hit it with some ease release spray, and then I'm going to mix up another batch of silicone, the thin stuff, just like we did the other side, and start laying down that first layer of thin silicone on this side of the helmet. So let's go ahead and get started.